Thank you very much for joining today. My name's Dunkelberger, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of science education on community health. Just a little bit about Sierra Nevada Journeys. We're an outdoor science education nonprofit. We're on track to serve 20,000 students across northern Nevada and northern California this year. And then locally, we serve about 25% of the students in elementary school in Washoe County, and about 2/3 of the Washoe County elementary schools, to give you a sense of scale. So why don't I take on the presentation here. And thank you for spending some time with me today. So we'll go to the first slide, what we'll talk about, kind of where Nevada is currently, and then we'll jump to why this is important, and specifically for public health. And we'll talk a little bit about the history of science education, the recent history over the last 2 decades, and how we got here. Then I'd like to hit some bright spots in the community, so kind of get us at an upward trend, and then talk about our work at Sierra Nevada Journeys, and then close with just a few pointers on how we can all get behind science education in our community. So to get us started with kind of where we are currently, Nevada is one of 9 states that's far below the national average in science and engineering readiness. And this was taken at 8th grade level by the CERI index in 2011. And if we go to the next slide, what the result of this is, through low STEM preparation or readiness in our community, Nevada ranks 51st in the Education Week's Chance for Success indicator. So Education Week is actually a notable newspaper or news magazine for the education industry in the United States. And so, and just as a defining point, STEM, which I'll be using often during the program, is science, technology, engineering, and math. I may also use the word STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, to give you a sense of some of the acronyms I'll be using. So, so I didn't catalog a lot of science education statistics because I think that they can get very depressing very quickly. Specifically, I think we see a lot of education statistics in Nevada that are very depressing. And so why don't I jump forward to why this is important, and we'll talk, we can talk in more detail about where the state is currently in a bit. So in terms of why this is important for public health, one of the main components is Brookings has done a study called the Hidden STEM Economy. And through that research, they found that 20% of jobs now are STEM jobs, and that these jobs pay on average 10% more than the average job. They're also growing very quickly. And specific to our region, they're high growth in terms of Nevada, with attracting companies, STEM companies, to our local economy. And I personally feel, and I think the methods of our economic development, the economic developers in our region also feel that STEM is really important. And mostly because if we look at a historical economy based on gaming, mining, and construction, which are all fantastic industries in and of themselves, but they're also highly correlated to economic boom and bust periods. So if we think about developing our local community through boom and bust periods, we are essentially, or have been, reliant on 3 industries very well correlated to the high times and the low times. So STEM is an opportunity for us to really smooth out that growth pattern and start doing long-term community development. But as we'll see, many people, and specifically youth, are being left out of this equation. So here's an example of gender shares of total STEM jobs, so for women specifically. So women account for about 50%, nearly half of the workforce, but they represent less than 1/4 of STEM jobs. And if we look at minority representation, African American, Hispanic, and American Indian population represents 34% of our population, but under 12% of the STEM graduates. This graph is a little bit different and shows the percentage of scientists and engineers in 2006, but similarly backs up the same component where we're seeing that women and minorities are highly underrepresented in STEM careers. Additionally, we've seen some increases in state science scores over the last 4 years, but where we're seeing the highest growth is in white and Asian students and high-income students. When we look at the Black and Latina students, and we look at kids on free and reduced lunch, that gap is growing because their growth rate is much smaller than either our high-income students or our students that are white and Asian. So what does this mean in terms of financially? What does this mean for these families or these adults as they enter into the workforce? Well, and I apologize, this is a little hard to read, so I'll walk us through it. But annual median salary for a computer and information professional, as an example, $77,000. This is actually higher than the average income for a Black and Latino family put together. So we're seeing a wide earning disparity. And if we could go to the right-hand side of the slide and look at unemployment rates, computer and information professional nationally has an unemployment rate of 3.5%. And if we compare that to the either Hispanic or Black unemployment rates, you can see a wide disparity, looking at 9.6% for Hispanic adults and 13.8% for African American adults. And so what we're looking at is a education system that is essentially reinforcing the haves and creating a much larger disparity between the haves and the have-nots for opportunity in terms of future careers. I'm going to go to the next slide. Great, thank you. And so specific to Nevada, STEM jobs have really stayed in demand despite the economic downturn. So currently there's 1.6 STEM jobs for every unemployed person. But then on the flip side, there's 4.1 unemployed people for every non-STEM job that's available currently. And so what we see there is a clear lack of labor for STEM careers. And we are really struggling to give all of our children a chance to participate in our economic growth. So large portion of our growth being economic development through STEM careers and a shortage of ability to prepare those students to actually enter into that economy. Personally, a little note from my personal background, one of the reasons I do this, I was a Marine officer. I was in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and I have seen firsthand what happens when large swaths of the population are not included in the economic development of a region. And those are extreme examples, but personally, this is work I am very drawn to give the kids in our area the opportunity to participate in our democracy as productive citizens. And what I see is if we are holding them back or not preparing them to join the most exciting growth areas of our economy, we're really doing them a disservice and potentially encouraging them to tune out or turn off from our local economy. So the Brookings Institute was commissioned by the state to do a report on the Nevada economy. And they specifically cited Nevada's pre-K through 12 education system as a large barrier, in fact, jeopardizing the state's ability to seize opportunities from the emerging STEM economy. When I look at that, I think it reinforces this concept that as we try to build beyond a boom and bust economy, we are not investing we haven't invested in the specific ways that are going to allow all of our students to participate as a workforce to continue to bring companies in that are STEM companies or incubate them locally. So let's talk a little bit. So far we've talked about kind of where we are and why it's important. Let's talk a little bit about the history. So what's happened in the last 2 decades to bring us here? 15 years ago, No Child Left Behind Act was passed with bipartisan support. It was a very well-intentioned law that brought together Democrats and Republicans. The Democrats, through greatly increasing by nearly 20% the per pupil funding that came from the federal government to students. And that was traded for a Republican interest in, broadly, a Republican interest in increased school accountability through standardized testing and higher standards. What we've seen is in elementary school specifically, that accountability was focused on math and English scores, and that's an important component that we'll visit in the next slide. This is just a picture of the signing of the act. Again, you can see members of the bipartisan community behind President Bush, and thought it would be a neat historical photo to include. This was part of President George Bush's primary legislative docket before 9/11 occurred, essentially. So with all laws, they can come with unintended consequences. And the first one is really what gets measured gets managed. That's a phrase we use in our business and have heard through many businesses. So all of a sudden, with No Child Left Behind, you had state superintendents, district superintendents, principals, teachers, colleges of education, all highly focused on math and English test scores to the exclusion of other subjects and initiatives. Terms came into the education lexicon like drill and kill, which is essentially a ruthless approach towards state testing preparation. Also, items like teaching to the test and discussions around over-testing have cropped up into our education discussions. And then combined with the Great Recession of 2008, all of a sudden you had this combined change in priorities with a change in funding levels, and many communities removed subjects like art, social studies, music, and in this case, specifically looking at science from elementary school curriculum, both as a way to save money and reinforce what they were being managed or measured to achieve. Interestingly enough, we now see, this happened in 2001, those kids that were just entering kindergarten and first grade are now second and third year teachers in elementary school themselves, having come through this process. So I think it's really interesting to see this a potential of a negative cycle feeding in itself, where we reduce science education in the classroom. Those folks go on to become elementary school teachers and may not have the in-depth experience to teach science again, and so you kind of have this negative reinforcement cycle that perpetuates without action from the community. So what is the result? What's the result of No Child Left Behind? First is that science education has decreased to about 2 hours per week in first through fourth grade. Not particularly surprising given the concept that measurement was tied to math and English scores. Additionally, the performance measures for school are focused on math and English scores and attendance, a wide range of focus areas, but are not focused on science scores. This in and of itself, I think, is scary, but on our neighboring state in California, they've done a very in-depth survey that I hope they do in Nevada, where teachers self-report the amount of science education that their students are getting per week. 40% of California teachers self-reported that their students are getting less than an hour a week of science. So you can picture self-reporting can be a challenge, right? But when 40% are self-reporting that that their students are getting less than an hour a week of science, that's really frightening. Now, we serve last year we served 116 schools. We're on track to serve more than that this year. So we're in a lot of schools in California and Nevada. And I personally believe this is very similar to the landscape of science education in Nevada. Whether it's 40% or 30% or 50%, I don't know. But there's certainly a high variability over the amount of science that's taught in the classroom and the quality of that science that's taught there as well. So another item I'll mention while we're on this slide is that there have been some very recent investments into middle school and high school science. So the question might be, why is elementary science education important? And that speaks to this slide a bit, which shows a decrease in science spent in first through fourth grade. When kids get to middle school, they have a science teacher in the classroom. There's also an 8th grade science test that they're measured on. But we know that middle school, through a lot of research, middle school is an off-ramp period for students where they start to really condense and define the things that they're interested in and passionate in. What we've seen in middle school is that that's a key area where women and minorities drop off or tune out to STEM. And our hypothesis is that without solid early experiences that build experience, engagement, and passion, that there's no reason to expect that those students would crash into their first experience in a STEM classroom and not tune out. So what we are highly focused on is making sure that their first high-quality science experience is not when they hit middle school, but it's through a continuum through their elementary school program. So I know I maybe shared a lot of bad news. Let's talk a little bit about our bright spots. The first is the adoption of next generation science standards by the state of Nevada. For those of you that are not aware, 2 years ago, the state adopted the next generation science standards, and maybe 3 years ago, and have been rolling those out in concurrence with the Common Core state standards. NGSS, or the next generation science standards, are a set of standards that states can opt into. In Nevada, I think I'm very proud that Nevada did opt into it. I was actually part of the committee that made the recommendation to the State Board of Education to adopt next generation science standards. So full disclosure, I feel this is an important component or a big step forward. And NGSS are important because the old Nevada science standards were very fact-based, where the new next generation science standards are very problem-solving based. So they provide a set of education milestones where children are building problem-solving skills that can help in a wide variety of disciplines. Taking a very problematic approach by, say, fact or drill and kill based approach. Additionally, they're much more rigorous, so we are expecting more of our teachers and our students through next generation science standards, which is also very important. The second component is middle and high school technology and STEM education budgets. So the governor led in the legislature in the last session tens of millions of dollars of investment in school technology and STEM education at the middle and high school level. This is really exciting. I think it's a real recognition of the needs of the economy and needs for workforce and needs in the schools that was responded to through the legislature, which was incredibly important. The only downside I see is that it is not focused on elementary science education. So we have potentially put a short-term Band-Aid on what I think is maybe a more pre-K through 12 issue than just a simply middle and high school concern. The third component at UNR, my host for today, I wanted to make sure I recognize the work UNR is doing. The first element is that the president of the National Science Teachers Association is on the faculty of UNR this year, so Dr. Dave Crowther, and that's really exciting. That's a real recognition of where Northern Nevada is coming and going, or where we have been and where we are going for science education. Additionally, the program Nevada Teach, I think, is important to highlight. This is a partnership, and I've been told it's the first successful partnership between the College of Science and the College of Education at UNR, two typically very disparate groups, creating an opportunity and reinforcing the importance for science teachers. So what they do is they take science majors, and at the end of their 4 or 5 years in that science major, the students can leave with both a bachelor's of science and a teaching credential. which encourages and allows these students to go back into high schools and middle schools and elementary schools and teach science. It's an incredibly important program, ramping up very quickly, and we're proud to be affiliated with it. And then additionally, bright spots in the community. There is a thriving nonprofit community specific to Northern Nevada, and I've highlighted some partners here like the Discovery Museum, Keep Truckee Meadows Beautiful, the Nevada Museum of Art, where we work on STEAM programs, Great Basin Institute, where we work on science and literacy programs. I should mention, I see Sue Jaycox is on the webinar. Great Basin Outdoor School is a fantastic organization. Desert Research Institute's Green Power program. So there are a lot of programs that are really trying to push into the schools and change the narrative around science education for our community. So this brings me to what we do at Sierra Nevada Journeys. I mentioned a little bit earlier, but we serve schools in northwestern Nevada and northeastern California with high quality, hands-on outdoor science education. As an example of the scale of what we do, we're on track to serve 20,000 students this year. We currently serve 25% of the Washoe County elementary students annually, and serve 2/3 of the Washoe County elementary schools. And then specific to Nevada, we also serve schools in Douglas, Carson, Story, and Lyon County as well. So spreading out essentially within a driving radius of Washoe County. And our main goals are to use science to help teach kids how to think, not what to think. So I want to give them great early science experiences. I want to make sure that those science experiences build critical thinking skills that they can apply later in life, and inspire them to natural resource stewardship in whatever way they define for themselves. So this is an example, this is an overview slide of our school programs. Before I go into them, I thought I'd talk about the three key components of each of our school programs. The first and most important thing of what we do is called multiple points of contact, and I'm sure there's similar phrases in public health, but we don't want to be a one and done opportunity. So every program includes multiple visits with kids. They're scaffolded year by year, so if we see a child in second grade and we come back and we see them in third grade, we're using that prior knowledge to activate to get further in third grade. And additionally, we tie in teacher professional development and parent engagement in everything we do, so that we're really surrounding each student with high quality science education, kind of bombarding them from all sides. The second component is that all of our programs are built to help schools meet student achievement needs in next generation science standards. So all of our programs take the approach of starting with the standards that the state has adopted. We build assessments that would indicate how do we know that that state standard was learned by that child, and then we build the curriculum that teaches to the assessment that teaches to the standard. It's a process called backwards design, and known as the best practice in curriculum development. And the third key component of all of our programs is a combination of hands-on, multidisciplinary, and highly engaging. So you'll see kids out there building models, taking notes in their science journal, assessing or analyzing the data they've collected, and then communicating that out to their peers. So really try to activate the entire brain through the program. So going back to specifically our school programs, first through sixth grade, we do in-classroom lessons that culminate with a field science study. In the capstone of the culminating year of elementary school, fifth and sixth grade, we do overnight programs at our Grizzly Creek Ranch. So this is multi-day science education programs. We do teacher professional development, so that's teacher training and science education. And then we do parent engagement through family science nights and emailing parents after programs have occurred. And when a school does, this can be an a la carte menu, but when a school says, I'd like one of everything, we call them a whole school. And I mentioned we served 116 schools last year. 16 of those were whole schools, and we are encouraging schools to continue to sign up as whole schools to really changed the culture of that schoolhouse towards science education. I'll go into these in a little bit more detail in a bit, but I think maybe the next question is, how do we know it's working? I mentioned we're in a period of high accountability for schools with student testing. So Sierra Nevada Journeys, 3 years ago, we hired a consultant from the Nevada Department of Education, one of their assessment experts, to come in and help us redesign a process of pre and post assessments for every child we see. So every child that does a program with us, beforehand, they take a pre-assessment. When they leave, they take a post-assessment. We also send the teachers an evaluation to make sure our quality is maintained. But specific to those assessments, bless you, 90% of the students we see demonstrate improved comprehension of state science standards, which is really exciting. Now, those are on our pre-post assessments, and so how does that tie to the actual state science scores? That's something we're working on, specifically since in 2015, the scores were thrown out essentially because of the move to the Smarter Balance testing assessments. But the first whole school that we served started with us in 2012 through 2014, and over 2 years, they increased their state science test scores 40%, which is remarkable. I mean, changes in education happen at the 2, 3, 5% level. Making a change like that in a schoolhouse was really exciting. And it's a testament also to the hard work of the principal, the teachers, their other partners, but this was a really exciting proof point for us. And then finally, we're going to serve nearly 20,000 students, which means we've been growing very quickly, which also means that there's tremendous demand from teachers for these programs. So teachers recognize the lack of science education in their classroom and those opportunities for their kids. Actually have to take extra off work time to schedule a bus and do a fundraiser and get permission slips. So teachers have a hard job already, but they're adding to that to do these programs. And we are growing fast enough to have a waiting list in many of our programs currently. Additionally, I do want to highlight that we have a strong commitment to accessibility for programs. So we don't want to be a nonprofit that is serving only the highest income areas of our community. And so right now we're at over 55% of the students we serve are from low-income families, or they're on free or reduced lunch programs, which is incredibly exciting for us. So that means that the kids that I mentioned, many of the kids I mentioned earlier in the presentation that may not have those on-ramps into STEM careers are getting served at the higher level than their population in our community. So going into a little bit of detail on the specific programs, first is Classrooms Unleashed. So this is our science units for first through sixth grade. They're taught by credentialed science teachers that are on our staff. We also bring in student teachers from UNR that are right at the step before their credentialing. They get their credential, they do a student teaching component, and they can embed with Sierra Nevada Journeys and do student teaching with us. Each unit has 3 90-minute lessons in the classroom, and it culminates in a one-day field science experience at a local nature area. Each unit also includes pre and post extensions so that the classroom teacher is actually getting in the driver's seat to teach science before we get there. In between each time we see the kids, they're given a lesson to teach that our next lesson builds on. And then as we leave, they're given curriculum to implement in the classroom to carry on the learning. Additionally, we email parents with both pictures of what their child has done on their field experience, but also questions to ask to deepen the learning at home. So anybody that's asked a kid, how was school today, I'm sure you've gotten the one-word answer. So we provide those secret keys that the parents can use to actually get involved in their child's education and learn more themselves, but also draw more out from their children. As an example, I mentioned each of our programs are built to the state science standards. So each of these programs that I have on the screen currently is tied to a specific state science standard or set of state science standards. I thought I'd take the 5th grade program on watershed science as an example. So in 5th grade, we have standards for watershed science, also building models and creating hypotheses and testing those hypotheses. So what we've done is we've pulled together a program called Hands in the River. It's one of our most popular programs with fifth grades around Northern Nevada and Northern California. And in their first few lessons, students are learning about how watersheds are formed, what is a watershed. They build models of watersheds using tinfoil and rocks and drawing where they think water is going to go with markers, water-soluble markers, and then spraying their model with markers to actually see where the water did go and analyzing what happened there. Additionally, they're learning about storm drains and how water moves through an urban and rural environment. So specifically, storm drains can be an incredible source of eventual pollution into the watershed. And so learning about what goes into a storm drain and where does it go after it goes into this deep, dark hole. And then they go to the field and actually create an experiment where they're assessing the health of the Truckee River, in this case for Washoe students, or the Carson River or the American River. And often they'll assess the health of the watershed by doing a population census of macroinvertebrates. So macroinvertebrates essentially are bugs that live in the water, small, tiny bugs without spines. And by looking at these macroinvertebrates and doing an analysis around the diversity of species and knowing a little bit about which of those species might be sensitive to pollution, so they can't live in places with pollution, or tolerant to pollution, so they can actually live in a place that does have high pollution. By aggregating their data and doing data analytics, they can actually create a fairly strong conclusion about the amount of pollution in their local river. It's really exciting. And then they post that data to a citizen science website that also helps other researchers understand levels of pollution by different days, different times of year, those types of things. And I think it would be a great opportunity to thank both the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection and the Truckee River Fund for being very strong funders in that program, allowing us to see a large group of the local population. I will mention many of our students have not been to their local river before. They don't know that they live in a watershed. They have not done high quality science or hands-on science education before in the past. So this can be a really radical departure for them and an incredible learning opportunity. So we're bringing kids up first through sixth grade through a combination of in-classroom and field lessons. And then as a capstone during the culminating year of elementary school, which is typically fifth or sixth grade, we host overnight outdoor learning programs. So these are typically 3 to 5 days. Students come to our campus. It's called the Grizzly Creek Ranch in Portola, California, so about 45 minutes from where we're sitting here in Reno. There we have a 200-bed, 1,500-acre outdoor education facility. And the kids come up with their teachers in classroom, and for many of these kids, it's the first time away from home, so they're exploring things like independence. They're also exploring an opportunity where kids that may not have shined in the traditional classroom environment suddenly have this wide variety of opportunities to really step up and be seen as peers by their students, which is exciting. So when kids get up there, we have a full high ropes course. You can see some pictures of some elements there. That tower in the upper right-hand corner is actually a 70-foot alpine tower, which is a very fun, exciting thing for the kids to do. But we use our ropes course to build collaborative teams. And those teams then, once they're done kind of forming, norming, and storming, those teams are then solving science, ecology, engineering problems as a group. So examples of that might be looking at pond ecology and the health of our local watershed at the campus, or forest ecology and looking at the health of the forest and the life cycle in the forest together. Or another example might be building a large geodesic dome together as a team to create thoughts around engineering and the strength of triangles by squares, etc. It's a really exciting program, and you all are more than welcome to come see it sometime. So I mentioned every program we do combines both teacher training and parent engagement. I'll talk a little bit about ways we engage parents and then engage teachers. So we're on track this year to do 50 STEM nights at local schools, that's 50, to build parent engagement for our partner schools. So Washoe County School District and many of the school districts in our region have increased parent involvement in their child's education as a key part of their strategic plan. For Washoe County, it's one of their 5 pillars of success that they have in their strategic plan. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of scientific literature pointing to increased student achievement being tied to increased parent involvement. And so when we offer these STEM nights, they're a fun, engaging way for families to engage in learning together. And specifically, this is anecdotal data, but 3 teachers from different low-income schools have pulled me aside separately and said, "Oh my goodness, there's fathers here." And so that is probably very anecdotal, but it's incredible to make a difference where a full family or a whole family or maybe a single father that has not been engaged is suddenly getting engaged in the school in a new positive way. I mentioned our emails to parents, so I'll skip to our Next Generation Science Standards Bootcamp. So we started this last year. It was incredibly successful. Over 50 teachers come for a Friday through Sunday of Next Generation Science Standards training. These Next Generation Science Standards can be scary. I'll just take us back for a second to look at this slide. Look at this first grade standard of biomimicry. I happen to know what biomimicry is. It's and it includes really fun things like butterflies looking like the trees that they land on and things like that. Very neat. But a first grade teacher can be very frightened of a term like biomimicry if they don't have an experience in it. And so we bring these teachers together, and we did an informal poll of the 50 teachers at this last weekend, and only 2% had received formal Next Generation Science Standards training to date. And that's a frightening thought, so we're very happy to be part of that solution. And then I mentioned our teacher extensions. So we expand teacher resources by giving them extensions from our programs into math, into English language arts, which is ELA, and into science, so that our impact is not felt just while our teachers are there, but also throughout the entire unit with the classroom teacher carrying on the education. I'd like to mention just briefly the School of Community Health Sciences, our recent partnership with them. So Dr. Larson and her team have been very committed to service learning within the Community Health Sciences school, specifically every senior requiring a service learning internship. I've actually had 2 field educators come from that project, which is incredibly exciting. The students in this case is actually a picture of 2 of them with one of our lead credentialed teachers in the training. The great thing for the students is that, the college students, is that they get a very in-depth opportunity to try out education and youth development. They may have a future career path that they hope to achieve through that, in that vein, and this gives them tangible experience. 1, do they like it or not? And 2, something to put on their resume, which is fantastic. Additionally, it helps us spread our work, because when we're in the classroom, we have a student-teacher ratio of something like 30 to 1. When we go into the field, we try to have that be something like 10 to 1. So our field interns really help us see many more schools. And then finally, this concept of what can we all do together to help improve science education in our region. The first one is be an advocate for science education as a component of school accountability. So as we saw, what gets measured gets managed. So by not measuring and managing science education, we are making it a de facto low priority. Additionally, you can, tied to that, you can advocate for young people to become science teachers and elementary school teachers. It's an incredibly noble profession, and it's highly needed, including teacher shortages throughout our state currently. So highlighting teaching as the noble profession that it is. Additionally, you can advocate for, in your kids' schools, for science. So We often have PTAs, PFAs, PTOs, the kind of parent-teacher faculty organizations come together and advocate for more science in their school, and that could be an incredible resource. Third, we'd love it if you came to learn more about our work at Sierra Nevada Journeys throughout Northern Nevada and Northern California. Wherever you're at, we would really enjoy the opportunity to show you our work. Even better, bring a friend that you think might be interested. I know Dr. Larson's had an opportunity to do that, and I think has enjoyed it. We'd love to offer that to other folks in our community. And then finally, you can teach. You can volunteer with us. You can be an intern with us. You can get involved by volunteering. You can volunteer one night of the year at a family science night, or you could be a field volunteer that donates half a day once a week for the whole year, which is an incredibly, an incredible experience. And then finally, I mentioned earlier, over half the kids we see are on free and reduced lunch. We are working to grow our programs very quickly to continue to turn around the narrative of science education in the community. And we need community support, quite frankly. The cost of what it takes to provision the programs at this quality level compared to what the schools are able to pay or parents are able to pay is a big disparity. And so we need the community support to continue to grow and further our work. Thank you very much for your time. I think I've right at the 45-minute mark, and I'd love to take any questions or thoughts.